I'll never forget the way my little boy clutched my arm that morning when the guard shoved a folded paper into my hand and told us we were done. Our whole family banned from the neighborhood pool for the rest of the summer. My daughter's eyes filled up with tears before she even understood the words, and my oldest just stared at the sign on the gate like the world had tilted. Behind us, standing tall and smug in her wide-brim hat, was the woman who made it happen. HOA President Marjorie Collins, already laughing with her friends, as they hauled in coolers, floaties, and loudspeakers, the very things she had forbidden our kids from bringing. That was the moment I knew this wasn't about rules at all. It was about control, humiliation, and the satisfaction she got from watching us swallow it. Now I've been in construction for over 20 years. You learn something swinging hammers and pouring concrete day after day. If somebody slams the door on you, you don't beg to be let back in. You grab your tools and build another door. Or in my case, when the HOA tried to lock my family out of their kingdom, I decided I'd build something so big and so bold that she'd choke on the sound of kids laughing every time the wind carried it across the street. When my wife Claire and I first bought in Cedar Ridge, I thought I'd found a slice of paradise wrapped up in cul-de-sacs and tidy lawns. The monthly dues were a punch in the gut, $400, but I told myself it was worth it for the Olympic-sized pool, the place where our kids would grow up with summers soaked in water and friendship. Back then, life really was good. Evenings meant family walks with towels slung over shoulders, Marco Polo echoing off the concrete, and neighbors sharing sunscreen and gossip under big umbrellas. It stayed that way as long as Harold Dixon ran the board. He was a retired coach with a whistle around his neck that he rarely blew. He believed in community and letting kids be kids, and that pool was the beating heart of the neighborhood. But when Harold moved away to be closer to his grandkids, the board held a special election. I barely noticed at the time, too busy meeting deadlines and making sure my crew didn't cut corners. And that's how Marjorie Collins walked right in. She looked polished, late 50s, silver bob, sharp suits, and a resume full of corporate compliance. The kind of woman who turned every moment into a power play. At our first meeting, she marched in with a thick binder and announced, "This neighborhood has been running sloppy. That ends today." Her rules hit like a hammer adult swim hours during the hottest parts of the day when kids were out of school. No toys without her approval. No laughter above what she deemed a reasonable volume. And the kicker, every child under 16 had to pass a swimming test that she personally administered. She wasn't trained, wasn't certified, she just wanted to sit in judgment. At first I tried to let it roll off. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad. But Memorial Day proved me wrong. My daughter splashed water on the edge of the pool, whistle blew. My son finished his practice 5 minutes past the line, fine slipped into our mailbox. And one afternoon, Marjorie's friends stalked over to scold my little girl for laughing too loud. That night, she asked me, "Dad, why doesn't she like us?" We didn't do anything wrong. I had no answer. All I knew was that the pool had stopped being a joy. It had become her throne room. I rallied other parents. We drew up a petition, 30 signatures strong, and I walked into that HOA meeting ready to fight. When it was my turn, I spread the papers on the table and said, "We all pay the same dues. But these rules punish families with children. This pool is supposed to be for everyone." Marjorie barely glanced down before snapping the folder shut. "The regulations were approved by the board," she said. "If you don't like it, perhaps you should install your own pool." Her friends chuckled. My jaw clenched. That night, my wife caught me staring at that petition with shaking hands, and I said, "You know what? Maybe I will." What Marjorie didn't realize was that I'd done my homework. Buried in old plat maps from the county, I found out the far corner of my backyard wasn't technically under HOA jurisdiction. It was zoned residential recreational. I brought it to a buddy in city planning, and he grinned at me over his coffee. "Mark, you could put a tennis court, a playground, heck, even a water park back there if you wanted. HOA can't touch it." My heart pounded like I was 20 years old again. In that moment, the idea wasn't just about giving my kids their summer back. It was about showing her she didn't own us. So I sketched. A splash pad for the little ones. A slide curving into a shallow pool. A waterfall feature to make the place sing. Shaded benches for parents, a cabana for towels, safety fencing higher than code required. I even wrote the words Project Ripple across the top because I wanted every laugh from my backyard to ripple across the street and shake her throne. Word spread fast. My kids were glowing again, telling their friends who told their parents. Neighbors peeked through fences as the backhoes rolled in. Marjorie showed up with board members and her clipboard trying to shut me down. I handed her stamped city permits and smiled. Out of your jurisdiction, Marjorie. Call your lawyer. Mine's already waiting. She sputtered, turned red, and stormed off. The next week, she sent a cease and desist letter. My attorney sent back one line. Further interference will be treated as harassment. The HOA's threats fizzled. 2 weeks later, the water jets fired up for the first time and my kids screamed like they'd been handed the world. We launched the Maplebrook Splash Club with flyers tucked in mailboxes, membership free for families. Kids welcome, laughter mandatory, and one rule in bold letters: HOA board members not allowed. When families signed waivers and I handed their kids laminated cards, you'd think they were getting keys to a kingdom. By noon, my backyard was roaring with splashes and music, the smell of hot dogs and dumplings floating through the air and across the street. Marjorie sat at her empty pool, staring at us with a glass of wine like she'd bitten into a lemon. She tried everything called city inspectors, accused me of running a commercial operation, even strutted up one afternoon in her sunglasses to demand membership. I leaned back in my chair and said, "Read the charter, Marjorie. Board members are excluded. It's private property. You don't get to rule here." Her face turned crimson. She spun on her heel, her shoes clicking like gunshots as she stormed off. But here's the thing. This stopped being about revenge. The more families gathered, the more it felt like we'd reclaimed something bigger than a pool. We had community again. We had neighbors laughing, sharing food, kids making friends. Marjorie's empire across the street was crumbling and she couldn't understand why. When leaked emails exposed her favoritism, secret lists exempting her friends from rules, even pocketing money by renting out the HOA pool for private events, the neighborhood erupted. Parents who once supported her turned on her in fury. At the recall vote, she was swept out of office. Neighbors hugged kids, cheered, and for the first time all summer, Cedar Ridge felt free. The sweetest moment came later when a thunderstorm wrecked the HOA pool's pumps and the board had no money left to fix it. Parents came knocking at my door saying, "Mark, we need your help." I walked over with my toolbox and a team of volunteers, and we brought that pool back to life in 3 days. Not for Marjorie, but for the families. And when the pumps roared again, the cheers from the crowd said more than any election result ever could. By the end of that summer, the neighborhood had 2 thriving pools, the official one finally free from tyranny, and my backyard club, which had become a tradition. Marjorie eventually sold her house and disappeared. Last I heard, she bought into a community in Florida with no kids allowed. Maybe she thought she'd find peace there. As for me, I sit on my porch most evenings watching kids dart between the 2 pools, laughter echoing across the street, and I realize something. She thought she was punishing us by taking away access. Instead, she forced us to build something greater. And that's the truth about power. It only works if people believe in it. The moment you take it back, their kingdom crumbles. So tell me, if you were in my shoes, would you have fought the HOA head-on or built your own escape like I did? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know where you stand. And don't forget to share this story, because somewhere out there, another neighborhood tyrant is about to learn the hard way that community is stronger than control.